Thank you, Nisha, and good morning, everyone. Prof. Wong, you have made us hungry after showing us the slides on the egg, but rest assured, tea break is up, and we have got a fast and furious set of questions coming up. So first, to Dr. Vicknesan, there's a question on how does depression and MDD differ, major depressive disorder differ?
That's a quick one. Sorry, depression is synonymous. I mean, the depressive disorder, depression by itself is what we know it. We commonly understand it as depression, but actually what we're referring to actually is the clinical disorder, which formally is called major depressive disorder. So actually it's used by right synonymously. It's just that I think we use depression more often, but clinically we use the term major depressive disorder.
So there tends to be a very layman usage of the word depression as well?
Yeah, I guess that's true. And that's what we were alluding to earlier, both our talks, unhappiness and loneliness and difficulties in your feelings about yourself, right? It's often used as depression, but I guess what I was talking about was the formal clinical disorder of depression, which is major depressive disorder.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vicknesan, for that. Maybe over to Prof. Wong, another question. How has resilience taken on a different meaning in the last 2 years?
I would say that the concept of resilience is not something very intuitive to our community many years ago. I still remember when I left and spent a year doing trauma psychiatry fellowship in 1996. That was how long ago. I was first introduced to the term resilience because that time during the year of fellowship, I was in a program at the University in Maryland. We had to work with people who survivor of hostage crisis. We worked with people who were victim of natural disaster, like the tornado and the floods in the US. We also work with people who came back from Gulf War, who are veteran and had very, very traumatic experiences. And the concept of resilience came about is really how would these people recover from those adversity. That was the concept of so-called study of trauma or trauma psychology was about. And I think in Singapore at that time, I still remember we were asked what kind of natural disaster we have, what kind of man-made disaster we have. We are very fortunate. We didn't have to go to war after the Second World War. We didn't have a plane crash that time yet in 1996. We had one bad disaster that was Hotel New World collapse I think in the 80s. And we also had a bad explosion in the shipyard in Keppel. One of the Jurong shipyard, I'm not sure whether it's Keppel or Jurong. But the Spirus shipyard explosion, a lot of people were burned and some killed. And we have our so-called fair share of local so-called accident or major accident and some form of disaster. But we didn't have an air crash at that point of time. We didn't have those kind of big disaster, natural disaster. We were very safe. We didn't have earthquake. So the concept of resilience when we brought back was not that easily assimilated. A lot of people think resilience is that when you fail exams, you don't cry, you don't get depressed, you don't give up. So it was very sterile kind of concept. But I think the last 2 years, as you brought on the point, is that following the COVID, I think the whole nation, the whole world were involved in the COVID pandemic. People realized that there are major unknown factors that can threaten our existence, can threaten the life of our loved ones, can cause our family, our parents to lose our jobs, lose our income, and so on and so forth. So those adversity become personal. So I would say that resilience become very personal to many more Singaporeans. And I think the key issue is that how can we really learn from this recovering from COVID pandemic? I think that will be an important topic of discussion. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Wong. So moving on from there, a lot of questions on support. Maybe Dr. Vicknesan, one for you. What are some ways that teachers can support students after they are diagnosed with MDD, major depressive disorder?
Thanks for that. I think there's a few things in my mind. I talked earlier about having authentic, deeper conversations with each other. I think that that's very important. I think that school kids spend the most time in school, right? And so having the pastoral care, that person that they can connect with, doesn't always need to be the school counselor. Of course, it often is, but I think having someone they can connect with, someone they can be authentic with, someone they can open up with, a caring adult, I think it helps to. Um, I think when we have all those other conversations with different people they have with their peers, having a teacher they can also check in with, I think moderate some of those thoughts, some of those influences. That's one bit. I think that the other thing is the second thing actually is having um, liaison and collaboration with the mental health professionals. I know schools are often very keen to have connections, and I totally applaud that. I often get correspondence from schools that are asking for updates and asking for strategies. I think that that's something we'd encourage. I think we're all leading kind of very difficult, busy schedules. So the difficulty is sometimes having good collaboration. But I think it's something we should strive for. So in summary, I think too, getting is having that pastoral time, conversations with a young person, supporting, having open-ended, authentic, deeper connections about the difficulties they're having. And number two is having that close liaison as much as possible with the mental health professionals that are involved. Thanks.
Dr. Vicknesan, what are some cool topics that you might want us to engage students with, in your conversations with the young ones?
Yeah, so I think, there's all these different, I think books are sometimes we underrate books a little bit, and the programs you watch on TV as well. And I think I think that these are conversation starters, whether it's about a program and what it means to someone, and what it means to the person, the teacher or the educator or the counselor themselves, and where its place is in the world, and why is this an important topic. And I think that sometimes current media, be it books or videos or programs, right, are great conversation starters to help us reflect about our own beliefs and our own perspectives. And I think that then allows for sharing of perspectives, our own values, that then allows a deepening of the trust, a deepening of an understanding of each other. So I tend to do that if I can. And I don't know if I always have the time to, but I think that's something that's very special. I think that's quite helpful as well.
All right, so it's time for us to catch up on Netflix shows.
Within
right.
reason, I guess, without it being the be all and end all of our lives, right? I was saying earlier. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So basically, really doing what the young ones want. Thank you, Dr. Vicknes. Prof. Wong, any thoughts on this? How do we make a deeper connection?
Okay, I just share the slides on this. I think the take-home point is really that I normally like to share with teachers and parents is really how can we teach our youth to feel good about the things they can do. It's not just about them, but it's what they can do for themselves and do for people, and to really show them, because at the end of the day, a lot of our parents, especially Asian parents who are deep in the Asian culture, will always think that they will always love their children, but that's in their heart. So it's important to be able to show them, the children, that they are loved, both in a physical and warm way, and they are valued. A lot of the children I come across in the clinic say, yeah, I know my parents love me, but I just want them to show it. And the last one is to really help them, because this is really a wonderful generation of youth. They are full of potential. Instead of saying that why is this a me generation, but look at them, is that they have a lot of talent and energy. Is to allow them to release and find their fulfillment. So I think this is really what I thought the three take-home point, and recognize that the world is their oyster, because Singapore is good, is self-containing, but obviously we recognize the world is their oyster. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Now moving on to a much more serious question. If children display mental health issues and they are not directed early, will the symptoms be more prominent when they enter adolescence? Dr. Vicknesan?
So sorry, just some interference there. Could you repeat the question?
Okay.
So sorry.
If children display mental health issues and they're not directed early, will the symptoms be more prominent when they enter adolescent stage?
Yeah, I think that's it's something about actually paying attention to each other, and the feelings we're feeling and the worries we're having. And I think that starts from a young age. I think that it's very often I hear that some of the kids I hear, and I hear about their difficulties, is when I hear about how, and when they're younger age, they might have been bullied, or they might have gone through some various stresses, and they couldn't feel they could open up to anyone. And actually, parents might not be aware of it. And actually, things then affect their self-esteem. It affects their sense of self. It affects their relationships with the adults around them. And I think then that I often see depression come in adolescence because of some of the difficulties that happen, but partially because of some of the things that happened in the younger years. So I do think actually it's the idea of connecting, the idea of helping young people get through some of the difficulties, problem solve themselves, take on some of the things that they're struggling with some support and guidance. I do feel strongly it has to start at a young age. I think that we're often, when we don't hear, the no news is good news, right? Sometimes there's the idea of that. I'm not sure whether we can completely, kind of embrace that. I think it does need careful questioning. It does need careful support. We all go through difficulties, whatever age, and I think then that support and guidance, walking a young person through those difficulties, not solving all their problems for them, but helping them kind of troubleshoot a little bit, and what can they do differently, and love and attention, all those kind of things are important from a young age. Yeah.
So mental health really starts from the very, very young age. Okay, maybe just ending off. How do you spot if a kid is faking it? Maybe Prof. Wong?
Okay, before I take on the question, I just want to follow on what Dr. Vic just mentioned. The importance of the first 10 years is very, very critical to how when someone entered puberty or teenage years, the second 10 years. We have been looking at this, the first 10 years effect, and we realized that from a clinical setting, I think Dr. Vic and many of my other clinicians and psychologists colleagues would have agreed that many of our patients in teenage years, actually, as you look back, their issues and their problems, as what Dr. Vic said, actually originated from either the parenting experience or the disadvantaged social environment they were in the first 10 years. So the first 10 years are the formative years. They are very important, both for preventive mental wellness as well as subsequent management of their puberty journey experience emotionally as well. So I would say that a lot of focus actually moving on, we should look into the first 10 years. And we are coming up with a program on the first 10 years to look at how through social emotional learning and family setup and parenting, that could help really build the resilience and prevent some of the challenges that some teenagers experience today. So coming back to your question about whether teenage will fake it, I'm not too sure what is the context of faking, because if you are looking at a teenager having problems that either parents or teachers, we don't agree that or we do not believe that is a genuine situation, then I think it's probably more important to look at what led to this presentation. And I think that itself is probably more important question to investigate. And that probably will give some clue to instead of trying to be a binary to say it's true or false, but rather to help us to investigate further and say what is the issue leading to this presentation. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Vicknesan, any thoughts on that?
Not really, except just to say that even when kids say, we're thinking about faking it, right, there's still an underlying wish or want. So I think it's about getting, so even if when someone tells a lie or someone says something that's not quite true or they're exaggerating certain things, right, one would still want to go to the bottom of it because there must be a wish or a want or a conflict of mind or something they're struggling with that brings them to that point, right? So it's going beyond the supervision, trying to get to the deeper underlying beliefs and worries and difficulties.
All right, thank you very much. It's been very informative. Perhaps you'd like to round off with one of your beautiful experiences in this journey till far. Prof. Wong, perhaps?
Yeah, sorry, which journey are you referring to?
Your career, maybe, in this resilience journey.
Oh, career. I think it's been almost 30 years that we have been looking into areas of resilience in different aspects. First was really from the military aspect, and second was from the youth, and more recently was really from the SARS and now COVID. I think the one message I like to share is that resilience is something that administrator and policymaker would like to have a silver bullet and says that I can fix it all. But actually it boils down to individual and family unit. Because the Asian Chinese has a saying that you need to have a family before you build a country. And without the family, it's very difficult and challenging for any children or adolescent growing up. So you find that the schema of individual, family, and community is not just strong as a Asian value, but it does translate into real happiness or challenging moment for an individual or even for society. So I would say that in my own journey is a lot of learning along the way, and it's always evolving. And the threat to the world, the threat to the community, the threat to the self is always evolving. And I think, as I said earlier on, we are lifelong learners. Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. Wong. Dr. Vicknesan?
I think I've learned a lot from my time working with young people. I think it's prompted, the difficulties we're facing now as a society and as a world. It's prompted me to examine myself and my own habits as a person who then gets very stressed at work and comes home and just vegetates over whatever media I have in front of me. I think I've been reading, and it's talking about Marimuttu and the US in general, and I've been listening to recently to Yuval Harari. Yuval Harari is actually a historian. He's actually a medievalist, but he talks a lot about the future because he believes that by looking at the past, you can then think about the future. And one of the things, and I'm sure other people have been talking about this, is one of the difficulties we're having right now is we just don't have enough time to ask ourselves who we are. And, that age-old question about who am I and who do I stand for is not just faced by adolescents, also faced by all of us, I feel. And we're just at the mercy of being bombarded with so much things that we don't have enough time to ask ourselves this question. So actually what I was going to say and round off is just that a lot of the learnings myself has been triggered by the things, the conversation I've had with young people about their difficulties. And then I've looked at my own habits and my own patterns of thinking and the things I get into. And I've really been forced to ask myself, how much time do I want to dedicate to actually spending online versus how much time I want to dedicate to asking myself those really important questions? Because it's in knowing who we are that we can help ourselves understand our purpose. And actually, I feel that part of the struggles of adolescence is to find that purpose, master some of those difficulties we're struggling with, and then eventually, at the end of it, find the purpose that we believe in, and maybe find some glory in that. helps us feel better and feels good about ourselves. That's how I would see it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vicknesan. Okay.